14wisdom.com. I was racking my brain on how to introduce Jeff, and then I read the bio in the speaker bios and realized that I like it. It's pretty terrific. Jeff Goldstein is a writer living in Colorado. Before the birth of his son, he spent most of his time teaching at a private university and writing short fiction. These days, he finds himself doing a lot of very simple shape puzzles. And when his mind wanders, looking for instances of subversively placed anti-capitalist, pro-progressive propaganda in shows like Higglytown Heroes, if only as a way to keep his critical faculty sharp and to keep himself distracted while he's changing backloaded diapers. And so with that, I'll give the mic to Jeff Goldstein.
Can everyone hear me okay? No offense to Mr. Orwell, and thank you for bringing him up, but writing for me is purely about egoism, and any effect that I've had on the political process as a result of that is incidental. I was going to talk a little bit about my site, 14 Wisdom, but before I do, I want to, because we're free marketers here, I want to kind of answer some of the things that Ross brought up and let you guys decide and maybe ask us in Q&A what you think. I'm a little uncomfortable, frankly, with the argument that for conservative blogs or libertarian blogs to become more successful, we have to essentially become more like the left. Pragmatically, this is probably the case, and I think Ross makes that point very well. But it's a matter of, do we wish to sell our soul in order to reach the same kind of political endgame that the left is trying to reach? I think it's untrue that we've had, as conservative bloggers, little effect on the Republican Party. I can think of at least two examples. First was Harriet Miers, the Harriet Miers nomination. It was an outpouring from legal conservatives with concerns over Harriet Miers that essentially led to her withdrawing as a Supreme Court nominee. Secondly, there was McCain and illegal immigration. Now, granted, I don't think the right gets as outraged as often as the left, and so we tend to pick our battles maybe a little bit more. And I think that's ultimately a good thing. I mean, it might be in the short term that all this great organization that the left has will really help them, again, in the short term, but I think it comes off as very contrived, very manipulative. Now, granted, they're speaking to politicians who are open to contrivances and manipulation, so that it helps their cause. And I think we can probably do some of the same thing on the right side. I'm just not sure whether or not we should. Do we want a short-term victory or a long-term victory? Do we go towards pragmatism, or do we stick with our ideology? These are just some questions to consider when we're thinking about how maybe to proceed. I was asked to talk a little bit about my site and blogging in general, so that's what I'll do now. How I got started was a question I'm often asked. My blog started in 2001 in December. It was a direct result of the attacks of 9/11 and not being able to find information anywhere that I thought wasn't sort of weighted towards we should be looking into our souls right now and trying to decide what we did wrong to cause these attacks. I just didn't see it enough. So I started looking around on the internet, and I found some sites that predated 9/11. Instapundit was one of them. Andrew Sullivan, I think, was another. And I started getting information there. They were updated more frequently. Really enabled me to keep up on the news as it was happening, and without the kind of major mainstream media filter or bias that you're used to seeing. And I thought, wow, this is a great thing. So then after a while I realized, as soon as I could figure out how to work the software, I can do this. So shortly thereafter I took up my own site. The rigors of keeping it up daily is another thing Ross talked about. I I tend to work in spurts. I can go 18 months at a time, and then I'm gone for 3 or 4 months. What I've done differently now is I've taken on some guest bloggers when I'm gone who do really excellent work, and they keep the site going until I come back, and that has helped maintain traffic. So the idea of branding your site through your own name is a good one, but don't be afraid again to bring in help if you need it, especially if you know, depending on what you want to do with your site, if you want to be a high traffic site. Another question that I'm asked all the time, and this one really strikes home with me, is what are the advantages versus the disadvantages of using your own name on your site? You'll see a lot of sites, even on the right side of the blogosphere, Ace of Spades, Ala Pundit, the writers don't use their real names. I have always used my real name. For my troubles, I've had a stalker. Someone threatened to kill my son, had to go to court, get an injunction, and that kind of thing. So there are downfalls of identifying yourself publicly, you know, putting yourself in the crosshairs, especially if you become influential. The advantages, however, are that you get an increased credibility, I think, and also there's a measure of accountability. I mean, this is your name that you're attaching things to. So, you know, if you're going to attach your name to something, you should be sure that you want, in the future, to have your name attached to that. This is not something that you're going to run away from. This doesn't mean you can't change your opinions, but you must be willing to acknowledge that you're changing your opinions.